I'm Elena, and I've been married for 3 years. I'm a stay-at-home mom with a wonderful husband, Michael, and our daughter. Michael works in an office, and while he's usually cool and reserved, he always puts in the effort to take care of our family. One day, during his lunch break, I received a call from him, which was unusual. Curious, I picked up, thinking it must be something urgent for him to call at this time. But what he said was completely unexpected. To uncover the truth, I decided to visit someone, and what I discovered was shocking. It was a regular weekday afternoon, and I was relaxing with a book and a cup of coffee when Michael's call came through. He rarely calls during work hours, so I was immediately surprised. As soon as I answered, he started saying things that were hard to understand. His voice was lower than usual, and I could sense both anger and confusion in his tone. At first, I couldn't make sense of what he was saying. But then he asked, "So, it seems you're leaving our child with my mother every weekday. What's going on?" I was completely taken aback by his accusation. He quickly clarified that he wasn't blaming me, but wanted to talk it through. Apparently, my mother-in-law had called him earlier. Since our apartment and her house are about an hour's drive apart, we rarely see each other, except for occasional family gatherings during the new year. I don't have a driver's license, so I usually handle transportation, especially with our young daughter. Given this, the idea of me going to my in-laws' place every day seemed absurd. According to my mother-in-law, I was supposedly leaving our child with her daily, and then going out to have fun. She claimed she had reached her limit and called Michael. When Michael heard this, he strongly denied it. However, she had sent him photos of her pushing a stroller with our baby girl or videos of her drinking milk. Michael was puzzled by these images. I saw the forwarded photos too, but something felt off. They all showed the child from behind or in profile, never clearly showing her face. None of the photos had a clear shot of her face. I pointed this out, and Michael quietly agreed, saying, "Yeah." Despite both of us standing our ground with my mother-in-law, we were left frustrated and at a loss. I reassured Michael, telling him I've never left our child at my in-laws and that she was right here with me. Michael apologized, realizing he had jumped to conclusions, and then he fell silent. Michael must have been wrestling with various thoughts, but I couldn't stop wondering why my mother-in-law suddenly made such an accusation. Michael, being the kind and family-oriented person he is, probably didn't want to believe his mother was lying. At the same time, he couldn't fully blame me without any proof, which might explain his hesitant approach. "Michael, let's go to your mother's place and find out what's going on," I suggested. He agreed with a simple "understood" and hung up. Over the weekend, we decided to visit my in-laws' house after quite some time. I was a bit concerned about our 9-month-old daughter being in the car for an hour, but to my relief, she didn't fuss at all, and we arrived safely. As soon as we pressed the intercom, hurried footsteps echoed inside, and the door opened to reveal my stern-faced mother-in-law. Michael didn't waste any time. "Mom, we need a detailed explanation," he said. She sighed and replied honestly, "Ethan claims Elena has been leaving her daughter with him, so I wanted to hear Elena's side of the story." Michael and I exchanged puzzled glances. "Ethan?" Michael's brother had been married but got divorced within 6 months due to some issues. I had very little interaction with my in-laws, so the idea of Ethan and me being connected was absurd. Michael had tried to explain this to his mother, but she remained stubborn. Still, I couldn't see her as someone who would lie. "Those photos, Ethan took them, right?" I asked. My mother-in-law nodded. Strangely, all the photos clearly showed her arms, body, and face as if taken intentionally from that angle. Given the context, it seemed likely Aiken was involved, but as expected, I sighed, unstrapped our daughter from the baby carrier, and showed her to my mother-in-law. The last time you saw our daughter was when she was about a month old, right? It's been 9 months since then, so she's changed, but this child is undeniably ours. As my mother-in-law peered at our daughter, their eyes met. Our daughter smiled, but my mother-in-law's expression tightened. It was clear that the child she had cared for looked different. Michael also seemed reluctant to believe his mother was lying, and a heavy silence hung between us. At that moment, we heard the front door open, and someone called out, "I'm home." Michael and my mother-in-law headed toward the entrance while I peeked from the slightly open living room door. There stood Ethan, holding a baby who appeared to be about the same age as our daughter. Curious about this strange situation, both my mother-in-law and Michael began questioning Ethan. But instead of clearing things up, Ethan confidently insisted on some outrageous claims. The more he talked, the more nonsensical his statements became. The shocking revelation emerged. Ethan chuckled and said, "Oh, so I've been caught." Naturally, Michael confronted him, asking, "Why would you do such a thing?" Ethan's response was unexpected. "Well, I dislike both Michael and Alina." While it made sense for Ethan to have issues with Michael since they were brothers, I couldn't understand why he disliked me, someone he had no real connection with. According to Ethan, Michael's habit of outperforming him at work was the reason. Interestingly, both Michael and Ethan worked at the same company, which was owned by their uncle. The company had a tradition where young male family members joined, gained experience, and eventually became independent, strengthening ties between businesses. However, despite Michael's rapid promotion to a managerial position, Ethan remained an ordinary employee. Frustrated, Ethan expressed his selfish opinions, but then took it a step further. "You know, Alina, the reason I got divorced was because of you. Honestly, you're cuter than my ex-wife, Sophie, and she got jealous and asked for a divorce. I had only met Sophie once, so her opinion of me hardly mattered." Ethan's dislike for Michael led him to concoct a plan to harass his brother. Suddenly, our daughter started crying, sensing the tension in the room. As I tried to soothe her, Ethan glanced at her and remarked, "She's not cute." That was my breaking point. I vowed right then to teach Ethan a lesson. No more holding back. Before any of us could speak, my mother-in-law asked a crucial question. "So whose child are you holding?" We were all wondering the same thing. The baby's features did resemble ours, but Ethan's response was mind-boggling. "Oh, it's my child with my ex-wife," he said. The shock was palpable. Ethan and his ex-wife had divorced 2 years ago, and this child looked about the same age as our daughter. Ethan quickly tried to explain. "Right after we split, I found out she was pregnant and, well," but his statement didn't add up. If he knew about the pregnancy 2 years ago, the child should be around 18 months old by now, not the same age as our daughter. I pointed this out, and Ethan stumbled over his words. Michael added, "Didn't you say Sophie got married to a rich man after divorcing you?" Finally, Ethan's confident facade cracked, revealing his anxiety. "Did I really say that?" he muttered, his smile faltering as his eyes darted around nervously. Just then, Ethan's phone rang. He panicked, muttering something about Sophie saying she'd call later. I quickly snatched his phone away. Ethan tried to grab it back, but Michael intervened. I pressed the call button, and Sophie's voice came through. "Hello. Listen, my husband is coming home early today, so could you return our daughter around 4:00 p.m.? She continued, assuming she was speaking to Ethan. When I introduced myself, there was silence on the other end. After a few seconds, she asked, "Huh, why are you there?" Clearly agitated, Sophie demanded an explanation. I told her to come over and hung up. We waited about 30 minutes until Sophie arrived. As soon as she entered the living room, she snapped at Ethan. "Why did you get caught?" Ethan stammered, trying to explain how he had misunderstood the timing of Sophie's pregnancy, given that she was now married to someone else. Sophie's anger flared. "This idiot. And why did you tell your mother that Elena's child was yours? You should have said it was your girlfriend's child." She grabbed Ethan's collar, furious at his honesty. Upon further questioning, it turned out that Sophie had divorced Ethan 2 years ago and remarried 6 months later. While part of the reason for their divorce involved me, there was another significant factor. Ethan had accumulated substantial debt and couldn't repay it, so they faked their divorce. Sophie then married a wealthy man who had been pursuing her. Despite the fake divorce, their feelings for each other remained. Sophie withdrew money from her new husband's savings to help Ethan repay his debts. Even after the divorce, they met frequently, and during one of those encounters, Sophie became pregnant with their child. It's not entirely implausible, but were you planning to remarry after paying off the debt? I asked incredulously. Ethan and Sophie fell silent. My mother-in-law couldn't hold back any longer. "Your actions are outright infidelity. Pay proper compensation to Sophie's current husband and decide your future. And why did you push your child onto me, claiming it was Elena's?" Ethan's feeble excuse about finding parenting difficult and wanting to hang out with friends elicited collective sighs. Suddenly, Michael interjected, "So what about you and your current girlfriend?" Sophie hesitated, saying, "Well, that's just another excuse." But I noticed Ethan's pained expression. Judging by his reaction, I could tell Ethan was telling the truth. When I remarked on it, Ethan snapped back, denying everything, but Sophie's face tightened. Unable to bear the scrutiny any longer, Ethan tearfully confessed, "Actually, I'm dating someone I met on a dating app. She's pregnant with our child, and we plan to get married eventually." Sophie's eyes widened in shock. She grabbed Ethan's collar, furious. "What? After I helped you repay your debt and even raised your child, you're impregnating another woman and planning to marry her." The tension was thick, and then the sound of a recording ending cut through the air. All eyes turned to Michael. "I've recorded everything," Michael said calmly. "I'll report Ethan's actions to our uncle." As soon as Michael spoke, Ethan turned even paler. He stammered, "Wait, that's a problem. If our uncle finds out, I'll be fired." But Michael had already sent the recording, leaving Ethan in despair, collapsing to his knees. I intervened, trying to redirect the situation. "Sophie's actions aren't blameless either, so let's not put all the blame on Ethan." Sophie, now crimson with rage, pushed me and exclaimed, "Isn't this all your fault? Being cuter than me is your biggest sin." Her words made little sense, but nursing my scraped knee from the push, I calmly continued, "This recent incident could be considered assault, right? My brother is a lawyer, so I'll report this to him." "Excuse me for now." Sophie, alarmed at the mention of a lawyer, frantically apologized while my mother-in-law stepped in to calm everyone down. We quickly got into the car and left the family home. Later, Michael's uncle watched the video and was furious. He promptly fired Ethan. One of the downsides of working in a family business is that matters like these get resolved swiftly. My mother-in-law was also livid that her son had disrupted another family, and she immediately contacted Sophie's husband. Naturally, he was enraged and divorced Sophie. As for the child, Ethan's child was legally considered Sophie's husband's. He spent a significant sum hiring a top-notch lawyer, gained custody, and moved far away. Sophie was left saddled with substantial debt due to the divorce settlements and the money she had previously used to help Ethan repay his debts. Understandably, Ethan's girlfriend chose to be a single mother and severed ties with him. This incident led us to visit the family home more often, deepening our relationship with my mother-in-law. Currently, our relationship is excellent. Regarding Sophie's assault, I consulted my brother, who advised that she should reflect on her actions. Ultimately, Sophie compensated me with a few $100s in a settlement, which I used to buy clothes and toys for our daughter. Our worries have dissipated, and we feel a sense of relief. Moving forward, I'm focused on building a happy family with Michael, our daughter, and the son growing in my tummy.